welcome to Peacemakers. Glad you could join me today as I unbox the Great Commandments. This is a really critical video. I'm glad you stopped by to check it out. Jesus said that we are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. If you've seen a previous video of mine on love, you understand that love is to put another ahead of self. Love is only the suppression of self and the exaltation of others. The considering of others ahead of self. So don't think that love is having euphoric, giddy feelings. That's the world's kind of love. It's a broken, it's a fake love. A man says he loves a woman because she gives him what looks good, feels good, and brings him glory, the lust of the flesh. And that is all love is in the world. Don't get mixed up with that. True love is dying to self. That's what love is. So Jesus is saying, you shall die to yourself in these ways. Each time he says, love the Lord your God, it's like die to yourself. So I want you to imagine a big room, and in that room are 4 huge switches along the wall. Underneath each switch is the word flesh. Flesh, flesh, flesh. And above is spirit, 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 spirit. And there's a big lever on each switch. You can drop it down into the flesh position or raise it up into the spirit position. This is your room. These are your switches. You're the only one in charge of these. Now, Jesus, and each switch is labeled in the center. The first one is heart. And Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart. Okay, in obedience to Christ, we have to go into the room and change the switch from the flesh to the spirit position. You're going to have to go into this room on an hourly basis and check each switch, because they have a way of falling to the flesh position, and you have to be vigilant. You have to be watching those. So love the Lord your God with all your heart. Now the heart is the seat of the emotion and passion. That's where if it's set in the flesh position, then your emotions and passions are linked to your flesh. When you get what you want in the flesh, you get that giddy, selfish euphoria. And the Lord doesn't want you living like that. He wants that switch up in the spirit position, which means that your passion and emotion is linked directly to the Lord your God. When He is defamed, it hurts. When He is glorified, you feel joy and gladness. When your flesh is abased, when you are mocked, you rejoice because God is glorified in it. Your emotions are strange to the world, but you have to, do you understand what love is? You have to die to yourself for this to work. Yourself will always hinder that true love. So you set your emotions, your passions to the spirit position, and now you're loving the Lord your God with all your heart. And that simply means that whatever is pleasing to God, you take pleasure in. Whatever is contrary to God's law displeases you and upsets you. Now the next switch is very, very important. It says mind. And we have a clue in Scripture. It says the mind set on the flesh is death. I'm not sure if that's in Thessalonians or James, but the mind set on the flesh is death. When that switch is in the down position, set in the flesh, you're dying, buddy. You're in big trouble. And we're commanded, take every thought captive. Have control of your mind. Switch that up to spirit. Don't be lazy. When your mind is worried about the things of the world, the cares of this life, Jesus said it's like thorns growing in the garden, growing in your mind, and choking out the word of life, choking out the tree of righteousness. We're to take every thought captive, keep that switch in the spirit position, meditating day and night on the things of God alone. Don't allow carnal, fleshly desires to choke out the word of truth. So when that switch is set, we're loving the Lord with our mind. That means our minds are set on what can be pleasing to God, what can glorify God, what is true in God's eyes, how God is brought more glory in this world. All day long we're meditating on the wonder of God's creation. Is your breath taken away when you see the works of His hands? There's much to set your mind on. The next is soul. This is a very difficult one. The soul is the only part of you that is not a physical, material part of this world. Your soul carries on even after your body dies. Your soul is connected to your body, and consider yourself the ghost within the machine. Your soul is the ghost, and your body, this physical body, is nothing but an organic machine that you pilot. How do you like that? You're a pilot, maneuvering this physical machine through the world. The baby struggles because the baby is back here in the eternal, trying to learn to pilot this crazy little machine, learning, okay, which buttons make the arms move, which buttons make the legs move, which button can make this drool stop, and we get better and better at controlling it, piloting this machine in the world. But this machine dies and our soul doesn't. Our soul is another part of us. Learning to love God with our soul, to set God ahead of ourselves, is very difficult. You see, the soul has access to pleasure buttons. They're big buttons that the soul can push and receive pleasure. And the soul really receives that pleasure. And that's why drug addiction is so prolific. Sex is such an issue. Overeating and gluttony is such a problem, because the soul can hit those buttons and the organic machine begins to pound the hamburgers. Pleasure, 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 pleasure. And the soul needs to put that down and stop that nonsense. We are not here to hit that pleasure button. There is a higher purpose, and the soul needs to be aware of that. Set the soul to the spirit position. The soul is invested not in that pleasure button, but in God. That's a little heavy. It's a little bit of a philosophical trip, but it's something for you to love the Lord with your mind. Meditate on it. How do I love the Lord with my soul? Soul, would you get your hand off the pleasure button? What is wrong with you, you depraved thing? And the final one is a no-brainer. Love the Lord with all your strength. That's your physical body. That's this organic machine. It's very easy when you consider it to see that the body is an organic machine that can run on any fuel. It's wonderfully made. It's self-replicating. It's self-repairing. Google will never make a robot that touches this magnificent creation. It was your birthday gift from God. Have you thanked God for it today? Now God asks, listen, don't make that machine go through the world looking after your own comforts and pleasures, being a slave to the selfish passions of the soul. Make that machine serve the Lord your God. Make that machine go and speak the word of life. Speak the gospel, though it may cause people to scoff and mock. It doesn't matter. That's what it means to love the Lord with your heart, mind, soul, and strength. When you unbox it, it really is profound how much of a commitment and a death to self that requires. It's absolute. And finally, love our neighbors as ourselves. That means putting others ahead of ourselves. Jesus was the greatest example. Though you are all my enemies, though you are all evil, I'm going to endure humiliation on the cross. And worse than that, much worse than that, I'm going to endure the wrath of God. And I'm exploring right now. I earnestly believe that Jesus, son of Jonah, went to hell, went to the belly of the earth for 3 days. He was in hell being punished for our sins and carried the weight of all of our guilt with him down into hell. And it was only his righteousness, his purity, the fact that he never sinned, that allowed him to be released from that torment. But that's what's going on. When we love our neighbors ourselves, it's not that we have to have euphoric feelings for them, giddy, warm feelings. I can't do that. It means we're going to put them ahead of ourselves. Even though we may get scoffed, we may get mocked, we're going to tell them the word of life. We're going to point them to the true life regardless. God bless you. Have a tremendous day.